Hello and welcome, everybody. My name is Daniela Schwartzman, Strategic Partnership Manager at BayWa RE here in the US, and I am super excited about today's webinar. So welcome, everybody. We are going to get a wonderful overview of the C&I with BayWa here with our partner Sol-Ark. And while everybody is coming on, just get yourself settled and familiar with the different buttons here on Zoom. We will monitor the Q&A section on the bottom of your page very closely. So please put your questions, your comments, anything you would like us to share and to discuss with John today. I'll be sure to ask your question. The chat is not monitored, but you do find some valuable information about BayWa and also about Sol-Ark. John was so kind to post a couple of resources there for you. But for your Q&A, please use the appropriate section. All right. So welcome again to the Sol-Ark overview of the C&I with us, with BayWa. For those of you who are not familiar with BayWa RE, we are known for really valuing our partnership with you. Your success is our priority. And the way we work with you is we support you in different ways. So your dedicated account manager is always available to provide you guidance so you can plan effectively going forward with accurate forecasting, and that ensures that you can service the homeowners efficiently. We have an easy-to-use web store, very user-friendly for up-to-date pricing and immediate ordering, which simplifies your purchasing process significantly. We also have commercial services. We actually have a specialized commercial service desk that has experts that help you with the planning and precise product inventory forecasting for your commercial projects, assisting you with commercial design planning and more. Also, consistent pricing. So with our centralized structure, you can benefit from consistent pricing across all strategically located US warehouses. So that eliminates any unexpected fees. We have, as I mentioned, those strategically located warehouses. With those, you can easily access the products where you need them, wherever you are in the country. We also offer convenient direct job site delivery, where the products can be delivered directly to your job or construction site without the need of a middle warehouse. And so all these good things are available to you. So if you're a US-based installer and not yet working with us, with BayWa RE, please explore those links in the chat where you can learn more about how we can support you and your business. All right, so that was a little bit about BayWa. Now let's come to our presentation. I would like to introduce you to John Cromer. He is the head of training at Sol-Ark. I am super excited to have him here. He is a real resource to talk about the C&I products that are available to you. John, thank you so much for coming. I'm going to kick it over to you.
All right, Danielle, I'm going to introduce myself. Danielle, you may need to go into the settings and look for screen sharing, because when I click on screen sharing, it says screen sharing is disabled by host. So let's look into that. Otherwise,
let's fix that.
Okay, great, perfect. Let me get this going. So welcome, everyone. Let me get this underway here. I don't know if any of you said hello at Intersolar earlier last week, but I'm John Cromer. I'm the head of training at Sol-Ark. Today, we're going to talk about our commercial product overview. We'll learn a little bit more about the company to start out, and then we'll get into our commercial product line and applications, which is my favorite aspect, my favorite market segment of the ESS industry is commercial, and we have a lot to offer in this space. Before we get started, Sol-Ark, we are based in Dallas, Texas. I'm one of the rare remote workers at Sol-Ark. We do have a remote sales team and some remote field application engineers, but the bulk majority of our almost 200 employees are based in our Texas headquarters, where we have our warehousing, repair, RMA, technical support, operations. All of that is based out of a brick and mortar office in Texas. It's actually a 300,000 square foot campus, and you can come on by and take a tour if you would like to. We operate extended hours of operation to support the East Coast and the West Coast in terms of technical support hours as well. Sol-Ark as a company was founded in 2013, so over a decade old at this point. Our hybrid inverter product line that you'll be hearing about today came to market in 2018. We'll learn a lot more about that as we go. Our commercial product line, the inverters came out in 2023 and the batteries came out in 2024. Our kind of specialty is making an all-in-one hybrid inverter. And really, Sol-Ark is I call it the pioneer of hybrid inverters. And yes, there were hybrid inverters before Sol-Ark, but actually the definition of hybrid inverter changed with Sol-Ark's product leadership. Before then, a hybrid inverter was a battery-only inverter. And now when you go to the trade shows and you look up hybrid inverters, they're all solar plus batteries. Sol-Ark was at the very front of that trend back in 2018. Prior to that, we were experimenting in off-grid and making off-grid systems easier, which led us to develop the 8K hybrid inverter. So what is a hybrid inverter? Well, you can land solar directly on it. You can land the batteries directly on it. We go a step further. Our hybrid inverters are fairly unique in that we have a port for the grid and a port for the load, and then even a bonus port to add traditionally a generator, but you could also add AC coupled solar or an EV charger or just an additional sub panel. And that additional bonus port plus the grid pass-through capability where you can supply, basically go between the meter and the main service panel, and whatever the inverter does not power, that is augmented by the grid. That simplifies a lot of balance of system material. We'll be covering that in a minute. But whether you prefer to do AC coupling, which is very popular, especially in commercial, because there's a lot of solar-only commercial inverters that are great value, that you may just put up on the rooftop for easy AC coupling. You don't need to bring your own solar inverters. You can land solar directly on the inverter, and that's what I would recommend doing. But to each their own. There's different strategies. We'll be a little more nuanced on that as we go. But even battery-only applications also play a major role in commercial. And what I would advise the solar installers, and I speak this as a solar installer. I got into industry in 2008 as a solar contractor. But what I would recommend to the solar industry is to start thinking of yourself as a battery contractor first and foremost, and solar being an accessory to the batteries, mainly because the batteries are, everything you liked about solar, you'll love about batteries. They add a lot of value to the project, and they actually, once you get the hang of them, they install as quickly as solar, and add more value even. And we'll get into that as we go along. So our competitors, when they do a hybrid inverter, and Tesla has followed Sol-Ark into the hybrid inverter space, and we think that validates where we've been before Tesla, before anyone, going back to 2018. But our competitors, they don't put everything that's needed into their hybrid inverter platform. Sometimes they combine the solar inverter and they package batteries into the inverter. And that means your inverters can only get so large before they get too unwieldy. So almost all of our competition has smaller inverters, and that requires a combiner panel to connect your solar and your battery inverters together. And that combiner panel is often a proprietary panel. It's not just a generic switchboard. It's proprietary. It's one more thing to buy, one more proprietary piece of equipment to wire up. So Sol-Ark inverters do tend to be on the pricey side of the inverter spectrum, but that's because it involves all of this additional equipment to get rid of that combiner panel. So you can just put the inverter between, our most popular format is putting the inverter between the grid and the main service panel. And if you have a generator or an EV charger, you can just, or what my favorite is a sub panel. If you have an outdoor panel and an indoor panel, you just land them all directly on the inverter and, save time and balance of system material cost. One of the overlooked aspects of hybrid inverters and whole home backup, because let's face it, in residential, if you ask a homeowner what they want, if they want whole home backup or just essential load or partial backup, they're going to say we want whole home backup. And so a lot of our innovation in the residential space has been items like that integrated 200 amp grid pass through that eliminates the need for an essential load backup panel. However, in the commercial space, having a backup panel instead of doing whole building backup for commercial can be incredibly valuable. And so I would, I kind of lament the industry knowledge that's being lost because now residential whole home backup is so simple. And we're going to talk about some strategies on why you might not want to go with whole building backup for every single commercial project. It's certainly on the table. We have experience with it. We have, over 100 sites a month is our current throughput weight in commercial ESS. So we have a lot of commercial backup experience, whether it's whole building or partial. But I think that partial backup gets overlooked in commercial, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more as we get into the presentation. So I think is the time for our first poll question.
Yes.
We want you to participate in these polls, so be engaged and answer them. Danielle is going to bring it up, and the question is, which aspect of the industry do you work in mostly? Design, installation, maintenance only. Maybe you work in solar finance, or an other category. This will just help me kind of skew the presentation towards the design community. And so we're not going to spend much more time on this poll question, but we have a few.
Let's load it. We can see, but let's see whether we can actually load it so our attendees can participate.
Sounds good.
Maybe on the back end, there's something. I can only see the question right now.
Oh, I'll give the, maybe on the next poll question, we'll load it up. But this was the warm-up poll question. And what we see is our audience today is kind of split between design and installation. So that's pretty good. A little bit more designers than installs, and that's what we typically see. So I'm going to end the poll. Now after you end the poll, it shares the results. Yeah,
I was not able to see it. Thank you, John, for taking over. Pretty clear, and let's move on. I hope you get the clarity that you need.
Sounds good. So that's the warm-up poll. When you look at the Sol-Ark product line, we started with the 8K hybrid inverter in 2018, and then we made it bigger with the 12K and even bigger with the 15K. And then we got into commercial three-phase inverters that have native three-phase out of the box. We have a a native three-phase 208-volt inverter with the 30K. We have a native 480-volt three-phase inverter with the 60K. That'll do Y or Delta three-phase at 480 volts. But what you can see with our inverter product line going from very small residential all the way up to light commercial is that it's the same system architecture that's been field tested since 2018. And in backup, reliability is a key differentiator. And what you see in the industry today is there's a lot of out with the old, in with the new. And that means you're the guinea pig when you buy a brand new inverter model that the manufacturer says is an improvement, but there's been very little real world field testing. We don't do that at Sol-Ark. It's very apparent just looking at our product line that when we launch a new inverter in particular, that it is building on the lessons learned going all the way back to 2018. And that's important for high altitude. That's important for coastal applications and just reliable power in general. Now on our battery line, that is more new. In residential, we generally go with battery partners. We believe strongly in battery choice in residential. That gives you a diverse feature set. That gives you very competitive pricing. Well, that gives you the ability to pick very mature battery partners. And I believe with BayWa and residential, we go with Briggs and Stratton. And Briggs and Stratton as a battery partner, not only have they been in lithium iron phosphate pretty much longer than anyone else, but as a company, they go back 100 years. So that's a great battery partner for residential. For commercial, we go with our own batteries produced specifically for our inverters to keep things simple. Commercial projects, you need things to be simple and reliable. And yes, price competitive, but believe me, when you get into commercial backup, that simplicity and reliability kind of override slight differences in project costs. So we have a indoor battery solution that's a little bit lower cost. And then we have an outdoor battery solution with built-in environmental controls, an air conditioner essentially. And we'll learn more about that in the slides to come. And so now we have a new poll question. And Danielle, I think you have to launch the poll and then I end the poll.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do that. There was a technical issue in the background. So now I can see it. And this is your turn. Dear attendees, what size electric service do you encounter most? You can choose one of the following, mostly residential, 200 amps commercial, 400 amps to 800 amps commercial, 1000 amps to 2000 amps commercial, or over 2000 amps commercial.
Yeah. And as people are filling out this question, our background is in large residential. And so we whole home backup residential, and we have a lot of installers who are in residential. I would caution you about staying in residential. I would encourage you to diversify if you're in residential only, to brush up on your state's commercial licensing requirements, because we have a great light commercial or small to mid-sized commercial solution. And if you're experienced with our product line on residential, you'll be able to access the small commercial market if you're licensed appropriately for it. And many times our commercial projects you could categorize as just being a little bit, in some ways, the commercial projects are easier than residential because the batteries are built for the inverters. I'm going to end this poll so we can share the results. But effectively, what we see is, there are some residential audience members, but most of our commercial audience is in this 400 amp to 800 amp commercial service. And the Sol-Ark product line is really kind of laser focused on this. Yes, we can, as you'll learn, we can go up into the 1,000 to 2,000 amp service. If you're over 2,000 amps, it's possible to use Sol-Ark, but you're probably going to be using a much, like a containerized solution. Our product line today, and containerized solutions may be ever and ever cheaper on into the future. But our product line today is really for that behind the meter commercial where sometimes, putting a shipping container on a commercial job site isn't necessarily at the very least, the best looking approach to the job. And often it's just overkill and too costly for these smaller commercial services to afford. So we're going to stop sharing and learn a little bit more about our product. So the first is that whether you're using our 30K for 208 volt or our 60K for 480 volt inverter line, we have a feature called a grid pass-through, and it's 200 amps per inverter. So what your minimum project size for 400 amps, if you want to back up the whole building, the minimum project size would be 2 inverters for 400 amps, 3 inverters for 600 amps, or 4 inverters for 800 amps. You have to be a little bit careful with that grid pass-through capability because the inverter can only back up a subset of that 200 amp service. So you have to know your loads. You might be implementing industrial load control. And we're going to talk about the design strategy for this pass-through capability. Just as a starting point, what I would recommend is go to your minimum project size with the grid pass-through capability. That might be 2 inverters for 400 amps. And then just add at least 1 more inverter for a little bit of risk mitigation. And we go up to, in the commercial line, up to 10 inverters in parallel. So absolutely, it is possible to do whole building backup by going into larger inverter stacks. One, for the advanced students in the audience, this grid pass-through capability means that the grid relays within Sol-Ark inverters are oversized compared to our competition. And what that allows us to do is multiple inverter installations where you get 10 inverters operating in parallel when you switch and do that seamless transfer from going from grid tied mode to backup mode. That grid relay is a failure point, and the smaller the grid relay, the higher the risk. And so even when you're doing multiple Sol-Ark inverters in parallel, knowing that we have that oversized grid relay gives us and should give you the confidence to know that we can do seamless transfer with parallel inverters in a reliable manner. Now, that said, our commercial product line is at the moment is focused on kind of light commercial or small to mid-sized commercial. And part of that is ease of installation. And so we use 100 amp hour cell formats, and those are a little bit more expensive than what you'll find in containerized solutions, which might be going with 200 amp hour, 300 amp hour cell formats, but they're batteries that your workers can actually pick up and move around. So much faster installation times. We select prismatic cell structure, which is the most rugged cell structure. And that's often because we know our systems are going in outdoor environments, and we try to maximize the reliability of that versus other cell formats such as pouch or prismatic. We also have built-in fire suppression into our battery modules, and in addition, fire suppression built into the outdoor battery cabinet. And that fire suppression per NFPA 855 allows you to get exempted from the water sprinkler requirements for battery rooms. So it's an aerosol-based fire suppression. Whenever you have a potential for a water leak in a system, whether that's liquid cooling or fire suppression, those safety features can also be failure points that are no longer safety features. If they fail, they can cause arc faults, and we see that in industry all the time. And so for this, maybe for containerized solutions, you need that level of sophistication. We choose to keep it simple with air cooling for these smaller systems, so that you don't have the possibility of the liquid cooling glycol failing and filling up the cabinet with vapor, causing an arc fault, or in the case of the Moss battery plant facility fire that occurred about a month ago, giant containerized fire in California. That was caused, I believe, from a leaky water cooling system. And you can just, because we have the fire suppression built in, you can exempt yourself from those requirements and have a more simple and more reliable project. So prismatic cells, built-in fire suppression, very modular, and a 10-year warranty. Perhaps the tricky part of the design is that we have a slightly different battery cabinet for the indoor version, depending on whether you're using our 208 volt 30K inverter or our 480 volt 60K inverter. And that's because the battery bus operates at a slightly different voltage. And so when you're ordering your design, you basically say, am I on 208 volt service? Am I indoor or outdoor? And then am I on 480 volt service? Am I indoor or outdoor? And so for 208 volt indoor, we're on a 40 kilowatt hour stack. And with a 480 volt indoor, we're on a 60 kilowatt hour stack. And when I say indoor, yes, I do mean inside the building in a control room or a secured area, but this might also be outside the building if you're building your own battery cabinet or bringing your own container, building your own battery room. Because it's simple. There's no dip switches. It's automatically configured, so you're really just building the rack, plugging the modules in, snapping in the connectors, running the home runs to the inverter, snapping in the communication system, plugging in the communication system, and then pressing the power button and turning it on. It's specifically built for the battery inverter pairing. Our outdoor cabinets, it's the same cabinet whether you're on 480 or 208, so it's a little bit more simple. You basically buy the cabinet, and there's a little bit of a different wiring configuration, whether it's 208 or 480. But it's the same cabinet for the outdoor solution, regardless of your grid service voltage. I would say the tricky part of the design for the HVR, and it's not that tricky, it's just that we constrain the size of the outdoor solution. Our indoor solution can go up to 10 inverters and can go up to 16 battery cabinets per inverter. And that's like a 10 megawatt hour battery. I've yet to see a 10 megawatt hour battery. There are multi-megawatt hour batteries out there with Sol-Ark batteries. I've yet to see one fully exhaust the capability of the system for our indoor unit. Our outdoor unit, we constrain a little bit more to up to 6 inverters and up to 6 battery cabinets per inverter. And a lot of that has to do with the internals of the cabinet itself. We include the combining bus bar when you build when you order the outdoor solution. And essentially, if you get any larger than 6 inverters and 6 battery cabinets per inverter in an outdoor setting, that's when you want to start building your own battery room and have a nice kind of aggregated room where where it might be a little bit more simple. You might have 1 air conditioner unit, not 6 air conditioner units. So our outdoor system is great, but for the incredibly large systems, you're probably going to use our indoor solution, whether it's inside the building or bringing your own battery room. And we have resources to help you through that. And if you don't want to study up on the resources, you can just lean on our sales team. We have embedded field application engineers to help you with your design questions in our sales team. So that is as simple as going to our website, going to the Contact Us page, and filling out a sales ticket rather than a support ticket. The sales tickets, they will provide you with design guidance and design Q&A to help coach you through that project. And that goes for the BayWa staff too. If you're developing the project in-house, you can utilize it the same way. So as you can tell, we can go up to 300 kW of backup capability on 208, and that'll pretty much back up any 208 service. Then when you get to 480 volt service with 10 inverters, that gets you up to 600 kW of backup. If you need more than 600 kW of backup capability with 480, you would essentially be installing multiple systems on the same site, and they would be backing up different parts of the facility independently. So let's start out with one of my favorite applications. Certainly a popular application is retrofitting existing solar power with batteries with Sol-Ark. The way that you would do that is traditionally with commercial solar, that solar array is tied in as a line side or supply side tap, perhaps at the utility transformer, and you would essentially unwire that tap and put the inverter in line. And the reason is that tap, that where you're tapping on your solar, you would take your AC coupled solar conductors and just land it on the inverter on that gen port. And so instead of connecting a generator with AC coupled solar, you just land the AC coupled solar array directly onto the Sol-Ark inverter. The transformer conductors, the conductors that go out to the transformer, would now land on the grid port of the Sol-Ark. And then your conductors that go off to the building, you would land on the load port. And so if you imagine a supply side tap that goes in line between the building meter and the main service panel, the Sol-Ark inverter has the ports needed to connect the AC coupled solar, the utility service, and the main service panel built into that inverter. So for it can be a very quick and easy drop-in solution for adding batteries to existing solar arrays. There is a little bit of nuance with AC coupling, which comes into what is the size between the solar array and the battery inverter. And what it boils down to is if you want to use the solar array for backup power, then the solar array needs to be the same size, more or less, as the battery inverter bank. And so if you have, let's say, a 125 kilowatt SMA Sunny Tricore on 480 volt service, you'd want two Sol-Ark 60Ks to be roughly equivalent in size. You don't want the AC coupled solar to be much larger than the nameplate capacity of the Sol-Ark inverter. Now, if it's a non-backup application, that's a bit of a different story. So to learn more about the technical detail of design, we have what we call Sol-Ark University, and all of the installers in our network have access to Sol-Ark University, where they can find some detailed design classes. And you essentially are able to join Sol-Ark University by just going to our website and filling out our installer partner with us form and get onboarded into the Sol-Ark network. And that gets you set up to those detailed design classes. We also have a lot of classes just available on our website on demand, where you can just go to the Sol-Ark website, find in the resources section, find the Sol-Ark University page, And even without logging into Sol-Ark University, you can find some on-demand classes that can get you started with training right after this webinar if you want.
Right. Thank you, John. I appreciate that you were talking about those special considerations. Are there any other considerations for AC coupled solar? Or did you basically just mention the most important one?
Yeah, the other consideration with AC coupled solar is generator integration. It's really easiest to keep it simple. And if you want generator integration to not do AC coupled solar and kind of prioritize one or the other, if you want to do both, it's not that you can't, it's that you have to appreciate the nuance that AC coupled solar is controlled through frequency shifting. And when you have the grid online, you can't frequency shift the solar off. So things like grid export, you can't really control grid export with AC coupled. Similarly, if you have a generator coming in, you can't frequency shift the generator. And so you have to apply some additional control strategy. And that could range from external controller. It could range from features that might be included on the genset. It might be as simple as using the Sol-Ark to program the generator to only run at night, or to only be a manual start generator. That facilities personnel would only start when the AC coupled solar is not active. So there's a couple of strategies on that. They are detailed. So what I would recommend if you are doing AC coupled commercial solar or AC coupled solar with a generator is to fill out the Sol-Ark installer form, join Sol-Ark University, and take our classes on AC coupling and on generator integration to pick up that detail.
Yeah, and I'm going to plug in here that in addition to the Sol-Ark University, which you should sign up for, make sure you reach out to our commercial service help desk. They can also help you not only with the design, but also connecting you to the right representative at Sol-Ark. Dear attendees, please use the Q&A for asking your questions. You see there are some really awesome details here. And some use cases, and we're going to hear more of those special use cases as we go along.
Yeah. Okay, so popular applications of Sol-Ark. While we can do these very large systems, and we do very large systems, even before our commercial product line, we were doing three-phase commercial service with our residential. So our commercial line dramatically simplifies the three-phase projects. But very popular three-phase applications are time of use metering in California, or peak shaving, which is my favorite application because if you have high demand charges, that can provide the very best payback in the industry, as well as DERMS response and utility programs. In the commercial realm right now, if you want to participate in, say, the California DERMS response or the Connected Solutions commercial DERMS response, you're likely using one of our partners, namely Energy Toolbase, but we'll talk about that in a minute. We do have a 3-season peak shaving controller built in. But this gets us back to kind of where we started the presentation, which is maybe for some of these economic applications, not going overboard with the backup capability. And I don't agree with, there are installers out there on our platform who don't do any backup capability because their economic application sells the project without any backup. And I understand why they wouldn't do the backup capability if they don't need to, but another way to add backup capability at a lower risk than whole building backup is partial backup. And what's great about essential load panels or partial backup is that you're only backing up a lower power level. And so you've de-risked the project, but every commercial site out there, every commercial business owner has a need for at least a small amount of backup power. It might be that they don't intend to run their business during a disaster, during a hurricane, during a wildfire. You may not want to be open for business, but you may want your refrigerators to run. You may want your computer system and your site security, your facility lighting. And so we're going to get into this partial backup strategy discussion and the reasons why it's worth considering. But the biggest one is an economic only project needs a very aggressive payback. If you're beyond 5 years for an economic project on a commercial site, it's going to be a very difficult sell. But if you add backup power capability to that commercial site, all of a sudden the building owners can tolerate, a payback period that's within the life of the equipment, and you can sell a longer payback term and have a higher degree of project success. And we're listed for this load side connection. Not all inverters are. There are only specific inverters. They're called UL 1741 CRD PCS listing. And all of our inverters are listed for this, but not all of our competitors are listed for this. So let's get into how to determine if you have an easy commercial sell or not, or how to determine what strategy you should get into. I'm a big fan of just trying to determine if you have a project from one electric bill. And I'm not saying you should skip over detailed design, but it is possible to get a very clear picture of what you should be talking about to the customer by just glancing at their electric bill. And so the first starting point would be to get one electric bill from the customer and look at it and see if it's more demand charge or more energy charge. Now, demand charges are basically the height of your load profile. What is the maximum instantaneous sliver of demand, whether it be 15 minutes or 30 minutes or 1 hour of that facility over the entire month? That's a demand charge. Residential electric bills and time of day or time of use metering are energy charges. That's more like the area under the curve. And so there's a different strategy if your bill is mostly demand versus mostly energy that we're going to get into in the next slide. So let's do another poll real quick and talk about what kind of rate structures you're used to seeing, especially in the commercial market.
Yep.
So
let's do it. I'm on the clock, John, remember? What kind of commercial rate structure do you encounter most? Single choice again. Is it time of use? Is it kilowatt demand charge plus base charge? Energy only charge or something more complicated?
Yeah. And
that's 30 seconds.
And I'm really liking the results so far. Why don't we go ahead and I'm gonna just go ahead and cut off the poll now and share the results. But what we can see is there is a subset of the class that says I do time of use commercial, and I'd imagine most of those audience members are in California, where their commercial rates have gone through a little bit more evolution than the rest of the country. But what we can see is most of the audience are either on demand charges or something more complicated, which is usually like a tiered demand plus energy multiplication. But one way or another, the more your facility demand increases, the more expensive your base rate of electricity becomes. And we see the majority of the audience being on demand charges, which is great because demand charges have the best payback in the industry. So you should be very excited about demand charges and aggressively pursuing those opportunities.
Two quick questions, John, somewhat unrelated. One, someone in the audience tried to register for the Sol-Ark University, and there had been some kind of name key was requested. Have you encountered that? Is that something you can maybe share with everyone? Is there something to consider, or should we do that?
Yeah, we have a specific enrollment key because Sol-Ark, the logged in version of Sol-Ark University is only for installers who have filled out the partner with form and onboarded because it's a little bit of a premium environment. There is a cost that Sol-Ark incurs. So you have to go through our onboarding process. So we want you to fill out that installer form and know who your sales manager is before you log in and get access to the classes, so that you're better supported as you move along. So definitely, if you need help logging into Sol-Ark University, reach out to your regional sales manager. If you don't know who your regional sales manager is, I would encourage you to go to our website, fill out the contact us form for the sales team, and say, hey, I'm an installer. I need some help onboarding. Here's my issue. You can always email me too, and feel free to share my email in the chat. Just don't think that because you have my direct email that you'll get a more rapid response. We have a couple dozen regional sales managers throughout the country specifically focused on your market, and often they can deliver a more personal touch than I just have the availability for.
And you can reach us to out to your BayWa rep, of course, as well. And then there was another question: are you pursuing the UL 3141 that will replace UL 1741 PCS?
Yes, it's a evolving standard, and it would be courteous of inspectors to follow tradition and allow a 3-year code cycle for new standards to come to market in a sane and reasonable process. But yeah, the load side, we're already on the list for PCS, and that's what I would refer the inspectors to. Because it's impossible to abide with the standard as soon as it's released. But that's what you use big brands for, and we keep our certifications up to date. What I like about demand charges is they're varied. They're so much more varied throughout the country than, say, net metering. And so you might be one of those residential installers and net metering has gone away in your state and you feel like the rug has been pulled out under your feet. It's worth looking up your utilities and looking up your demand charges because, let's just say, take the state of Florida, for example. There's demand charges along the East Coast and not along the West Coast. And that means your demand charges on the East Coast are the majority of Florida, are the majority of your electric bill. But on the West Coast or Gulf Coast of Florida, it might be that energy charges are the majority of your electric bill. And that can impact your project strategy.
There's a question, sorry, John, to interrupt. There's a question about this demand charge map. Is there a more updated version than the 2017 one that you just showed?
There was on data.gov a updated as of 2023 demand charge survey. It's since been taken offline. So if you're like me, you've downloaded the data set. If you're not, then what I would do is go to the utility rate database and then just start pulling up your utility and doing it manually. So there's a website called the Utility Rate Database, and you can go and put in your utility and see what their active commercial rate structures are and just kind of do it manually that way. It's also a scriptable database, so you can extract the data yourself with a little bit of programming.
Thank you so much.
Or send me an email. Maybe you'll get it in your email as an Excel file. So if you have mostly demand charges on your electric bill, you may want to do a small battery only project and keep it really simple. because as you can tell here, your peak load is a small subset of your base load. And it's almost like the opposite of solar. With solar, especially commercial solar, you want to do as big a project as you can to get that dollar per watt value down. And I'm not trying to discourage large battery projects or large commercial projects, but especially if you don't know what you should be bidding or discussing with the customer. They say, oh, my demand charges are through the roof, but I don't know what my load profile is, and I don't have detailed information. The smallest battery is the most heavily utilized battery, which means it will have the best payback. So it's the opposite of solar, where you really need these giant cover the rooftop with solar to get a low dollar per watt. With a battery, you can do one battery and one inverter and have that be incredibly cost effective. And so this gets into a strategy of, let's say a client comes and they say, oh yeah, I have 30 restaurants and I don't know the load profiles of those restaurants, but I have 30 of them. You can say, well, why don't we start out with one inverter and one battery cabinet on all 30 restaurants? Because obviously the restaurant has a need for backup power, and that peak shaving for that demand charge will effectively shave off just the tip of their building demand. And that'll be a successful project and a cost-effective project. And if you didn't sell them as much as you could, it's very easy to expand these projects. You can go and do another inverter and another battery cabinet. The battery cabinets are not shared between the inverters. So all the battery cabinets go to the first inverter, and then you have a different group of battery cabinets going to the second inverter, a different group going to the third. That makes system expansion very easy.
Some excitement here on the audience side that they have a few clients that don't use solar but would like to see the advantage of BESS. And so there's excitement.
Yeah, and this is where if you go into the battery industry as a solar contractor, you might have some blinders put on by, say, net metering or just your own assumptions and enthusiasm for solar. But if you think of yourself as a battery contractor and maybe the project has solar, maybe not. I mean, as a contractor, and I'm sure as a distributor, why are we in solar and not painting or drywall, some other trade? And as a contractor, it's because, well, solar is expensive and it installs quickly, and that means you can make a lot of money at it. As a distributor, it might be solar has a high dollar per square foot value, so you can, get a lot of throughput and profit out of your warehouse or contracting business. And if you like all of that about solar, you'll love that about batteries, because batteries are even more expensive and they install even faster. And so you can actually once you get the hang of it, you can make more profit off of the battery side of the project than the solar side of the project at this point in our energy history. Now, that said, there is a bit of a 1-2 punch. If your commercial bill is mostly energy charge and not mostly demand charge, or if your load profile, your commercial bill is so big that you can add solar without backfeeding to the grid, basically, a battery only project or a solar only project can only offset a minority of the electric bill. And so to get into offsetting majority of the electric bill, that's when you want to do solar plus batteries. Again, it does not have to be a whole building backup project. It can be, but it could also be something smaller than that.
Another question here, because I think you're pointing to some really new, a different way of thinking about this, right? So yes. Michael's asking, do you have a financial modeling tool or any financial modeling tool to help with the sales pitch?
Yeah, we'll get to that in just a slide or two. But the strategy here is, how do you sell even without doing the financial model, even without knowing the load profile? And you can confidently sell a small system and add value and have that be economic. A large system needs to be much more detailed. And so it's, well, you can, if the opportunity is to do a large detailed design and sell the large project up front, great. You can go and do a whole building backup and sell the large system. But if you don't know what you're doing, if you're at the very beginning of the conversation, you can walk into a control room and look at the switchboard, and any one of those sub panels, any one of those distribution circuits can be your interconnection point. And so a sales strategy could be, let's walk into that control room and ask the client, out of these breakers, which one is the most essential to your business? And they'll point at one of them and say, that's the one that our refrigerators are on. And it's a school building. And if they lose power to their refrigerators after an hour, they have to throw out all the food in the fridge. You can say, okay, that's going to be our interconnection point. And we're going to do a load side connection. And we're going to provide backup power to that circuit. But we're going to do demand management and energy arbitrage for the entire service. So it's just like essential backup in residential, where you offset a sub panel, but you provide energy services to the entire building. Now we're in commercial, and that same philosophy has scaled up to commercial, where you can back up a portion of the building, but provide energy services to the entirety of the building. And when you start looking at the Sol-Ark product line, most of our systems are 1 to 2 inverters and 1 to 4 battery cabinets, and that can be a load side connection. It does not have to be a whole building backup system. And so here are some project photos. This is 4 battery cabinets and 2 inverters. This one, if you do a large service, that's fine. You can do a large service, but you're getting into multiple battery cabinets and multiple inverters in a detailed design phase. And I'm not trying to say don't do that. You don't want to leave money on the table. But if you don't have enough information for a detailed design phase, you got 1 or 2 options. You can spend months and months and put in a lot of your own money trying to do the project development, chasing down that large project. Or you can say, hey, facility manager, you don't really know what you need right now, but you can afford, the smaller system, 1 inverter and 2 battery cabinets. So let's go ahead and put this system in today, and we're going to back up your essential loads. And we know this is going to be cost effective because you're on a demand charge, and this will effectively shave off, the highest demand very effectively. And then we'll start gathering the data we need for the larger expansion and right size the larger system down the road. Plant your flag on the job site, because if you plant your flag today with the small system, you're going to win the system expansion, next year. And, this is what, for larger systems, I'm not trying to discourage whole building backup. Whole building backup has been what Sol-Ark has been focused on in residential since 2018, and really even longer than that, trying to figure it out in the off-grid world before then. My rule of thumb is when you're doing a whole building backup design, whatever you think the right inverter sizes should be, add on 1 more inverter just in case, So now we're going to do a poll, and we're going to see how many of you buy my argument and how many of you think it's interesting, but I'm going to stick to doing a whole building design in a very detailed design phase. So there's no right or wrong answer for this. It's really just kind of what do you think of that argument, so that I can learn something from the presentation, in addition to you, the audience.
All right, let's do this one. We have only a few minutes left. Based on what you've heard when encountering a large facility, what do you think your strategy will be? I'll skip the detailed design phase, sell a smaller project with essential backup, and consider a larger project later. John. I'll do a proper design phase and try to sell the larger whole building backup project first. That's going to be interesting. Let's do it.
All right. And so we're sharing the results, and hey, this is what when I think about this approach, I think about, well, what's the most popular residential design in California? And it's a single Tesla Powerwall, not whole building backup. And so it's what can customers afford today, and what can they do today, and what installers want to do today. And to say Sol-Ark uniquely occupies this space in commercial. So just to kind of fast forward through the rest of the presentation, we talked about economic proposal building. We are on Energy Toolbase's platform. So Energy Toolbase, if you're doing commercial economic proposals, Energy Toolbase is the right software to use. They also have a controller that is compatible with Sol-Ark inverters. So, whether it's the modeling, the economic modeling, and that CFO sign off, or going all the way through and implementing their controls on top of Sol-Ark controls, Energy Toolbase is a very good tool to utilize. They make the financial models that are so accurate and clear and transparent, it'll actually put a smile on the face of a CFO. So I strongly recommend using Energy Toolbase. Another strategy that I use is just to get the interval data and plot it in a spreadsheet and look at it, because we can see here for this Colorado dental office that their demand charge is 80 kilowatts. And then they could really use like a single 60 kilowatt inverter for the peak shaving. Sol-Ark, on our commercial facility, we have a demand charge that's more along the lines of 200 kilowatts, but we really can only peak shave about 60 kilowatts effectively. And a lot of that preliminary design, what I do is first I throw it into a spreadsheet, and then I chart the data and I look at it in the spreadsheet. And then I go into Energy Toolbase and model it there when I'm ready to do the detailed proposal. The final takeaway, and then I know we got to go, but the final takeaway is off-grid. We do a lot of off-grid, and what surprises me about off-grid is this is what off-grid looks like. Here is a EV charging station in a Costco warehouse back of the parking lot, and their Costco is the utility could not provide them enough power for their EVs, and so we put Sol-Ark, as a EV charging power supply in the parking lot. And here's another, and for reasons we don't have enough time to, solar carports with EV chargers, all of that balance of system hardware built into the Sol-Ark is just super optimal for parking lot EV charging stations. You don't have as much stuff to buy when you use a Sol-Ark for that. Here's another off-grid project. It's a plant nursery that we did for San Francisco Department of Public Works. And look what's in the background. That's the city of San Francisco at your doorstep. And so this is another thing that's phenomenal about the battery industry and how it challenges the notions of the solar installer is when I think off-grid, I think I'm driving 3 hours down the road going off into the middle of the woods. But an off-grid project might actually be in the middle of the city. It's just cheaper to not establish an electric service to site versus putting in a Sol-Ark inverter and a couple batteries and a simple solar array. So, think about off-grid creatively as well. Yes, we do diesel abatement and Bahamas microgrid stuff, and that's a big market too. But off-grid is not just the Bahamas. Off-grid is not just the cabin in the middle of the woods. Off-grid can be in the middle of the city as well. And so that's pretty surprising. Finally, last slide, structural engineering. We got it covered. We give you stamped templates as a standard template for your California seismic zones. But if you need custom foundational drawings, contact Vector Engineering. They're trained up on our product. They're very fast and very affordable. And they can, if our standard foundational templates don't work for you, you can get custom templates stamped affordably and quickly. So that's the end of the presentation. You've been a great audience. This has been a lot of fun, Daniela, and I can stick around for Q&A, or if we gotta go, we gotta go.
We gotta go, but I do want to say thank you so much, John, for coming here and for sharing not only all the details and the different use cases, but also your excitement and ideas how to approach this topic. Thank you so much, and I encourage everyone here. The webinar will be available. You can check out our blog page or LinkedIn. We will post it once it's available. And do reach out to John, to our team, to help you really explore this business opportunity. Thank you very much. You've been an amazing partner. We are so thrilled to work with you in all those different segments with your great products. Thank you, John.
Thanks, Danielle. Have a great day.
Have a great day, everybody.